Don't engage alone. We do this together.
Yeah!
We got it! We got it!
You 52 booklet.
Somebody clip this.
Welcome to episode 2 of SuperWonder Legacy. I'm Jared. I'm here once again with Britt, who has her headphones working.
Yes. Hello.
I had to bring that up because I'm an a-hole. So anyway, so this week we're talking about dealing with toxic fandom because being fans of Superman and Wonder Woman, and myself also being fan of the Snyderverse, we've encountered some doozies in the past.
Yes, we have.
All right, so let's discuss. So in the show notes here, we have our first encounter with toxic fandom / trolls. So Britt, I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, mine, I'd say it was more indirect because I really didn't indulge myself in fandom. It was just, you see fan art, you see, read the fan fictions, and that was it for me, especially when I was just into anime. But then once going into DC and Superman and Wonder Woman, I think it was the Tumblr, Hell Yeah, and it was, people can send in anonymous acts, submissions. Mm-hmm. And the first one I saw, it was just so hateful. And I'm like, wow, what is this? Like, where did this come from? So that's when the awareness of all the toxic came from. Then you go on other social sites, especially Twitter. Twitter is
a hellhole, my friend.
Yes, it is. So yeah, that was pretty much my first encounter. Just awareness.
With me, okay, so I decided this may have been a stupid decision, but hell, you know what? I was trying to grow the channel, and I figured I might as well poke the bear a little bit. I published the Lois is useless video, and that was because I had already encountered like a little bit of negativity because of me defending a lot of Snyder, but all right, so what happened was, I'm trying to find the particular video. I had to remove a lot of the comments because they were just really, really aggressively hurtful. Case in point, the first comment someone put on Twitter was, "Go F yourself."
Yeah, they'll definitely personally, they'll go way below the belt.
Yeah, they'll go at the toes, essentially. All right. I had to go somewhere. Okay, so let me see. I'm trying to see if I have a but a lot of people were like on my side. They're like, thank God someone said it. Like someone goes, any Lois bashing I can get behind 100%. I love that. Everyone's like, yes, totally agree. Someone's like, dang, no one ever says this. And I'm like, well, I am the Lord of Comics, so I will say whatever I need to do. Of course, Hellacre said I agree. Then someone brought up it's a lot of people had some legitimate points, but a lot of them here's the thing. What I noticed, a lot of it is the hardcore purists that for some reason, and this has been an issue. It's not just with like the shipping community, but with the Superman fandom in general. Like, did you know that before Cavill was even cast, what they wanted to do for Superman is for them to essentially deep fake Christopher Reeve onto the Superman actor so he could always be Superman?
Oh no!
Yeah, exactly.
An awful idea.
Exactly, and that one scene, The Flash, kind of showed that. But the thing is that to a certain degree, I get it, because I get that you have this one version of a character that you absolutely love and that you don't want to see go away, even though if it's not necessarily canon now, it doesn't mean those movies don't exist. But the thing is that even my dad, when I told him about the video and stuff, he goes, well, yeah, Superman's always been with Lois. But as you and I brought up last week and have brought up on Twitter, yeah, they've always been together. And by the way, I love when people always try and bring up, well, it was popular in the 60s. Are we in the 60s?
But that's the thing, that they are together, but it's not really like, you have to really go into the history. They weren't together as in, of course, she's the love interest, but at the same time, they weren't solid. Like,
It was
you still
it was
have,
girlfriend Lois Lane, not wife.
right. That didn't happen until the 90s. And even then, it was like, I think editorial wanted to get rid of it a year afterwards anyway, you know. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of history that they want to gloss over just to make their point. And
And the funny part is that then they'll accuse us of not reading comics.
right.
I'm like, dude, have you seen my background?
Right. Yeah, that was recent. It was even recent. I mean, with being the main holder of the Instagram, it's like so many comments every day. And it's either, you know, this person trying to tell me, you know, this is that. And I'm like, okay, this whole entire page is posting, you know, actual comic panels, and you tell me this isn't the truth. Or you say, well, that's not supposed to be. Well, it's at some point it's supposed to be if I'm posting a published, you know, image.
If from a book that has the official DC logo.
Right.
I'm just, and the thing is like, I mean, the problem is that with a lot of fans, when it comes to like comic books, in particular Superman, they treat it like they're like the version of the character that they first started reading is the only valid version of the character that's ever existed. And
oh yeah, the end all be all.
That's just not true. It's DC. They reboot every 30 seconds.
That's what the multiverse is for. Mm-hmm. You know, you I remember another time when Gal Gadot actually reposted. It was just a, you know, fan art, and it was just a motivational thing. And oh my gosh, the rage was just, I think because like on the little repost, it was like the tiny little image of who she reposted. And the rage on Instagram and Twitter was just overflowing. And it was one particular one that just kept saying, you know, she doesn't know what she's doing. She shouldn't play Wonder Woman, that she is engaging in this certain fandom or whatever. And it's like, who are you, you know, to dictate, first of all, a actress or celebrity that doesn't know you at all, and to try to tell her what she can and cannot do. It's not like she promoted the shipping or anything like that. She just posted a fan art of Wonder Woman, motivational, you know, it was motivational. But because it's associated with an account that you may not like, you be hostile to somebody, you know. And I think a lot of times too, people feel like because you're hiding behind a computer screen, you are able to, you know, say these horrible things. And sometimes some of those people, they claim that they might be married, that they might have children. So I'm thinking, okay, if you have children and you're married, you wouldn't want anybody else to speak to your husband or wife like this, or your children, like bully them, you know, online. So why would you do it to others?
Yeah, and also on that, well, here's the thing. There were some people that were very anti-Gal just because she happened to be Israeli too. So there was just that. She was always going to encounter some backlash. The other thing is that I'm sure you remember this, when Jen Bartel, a very talented comic book artist, posted, I think it was just a thing that she drew of Superman and Wonder Woman together as a couple. And she got so much hate online that she actually had to respond saying, listen, guys, just because I draw something doesn't mean I endorse it. This is just me drawing it for fun. And she basically said, if your whole mood is dependent upon if someone shares your ship, that's really sad.
Right. Yes, it was what, about 2 months ago
Mhm.
for Wonder Woman 800. It was
Mhm.
just one panel, and that's the thing, is that anybody, whether it's a, a fan artist or a pro, they will go on an attack because you can't have this certain belief. You can't be neutral. You have to just align with their beliefs.
Yeah, and it's like, and here's the thing: it's like, even when I put in my stuff in addendum saying this is just my opinion, any opinion you have is valid, they don't care, because the problem is, for these people, they treat it like we somehow work at DC and can influence the way DC operates. And I'm like, I'm just a YouTuber. I'm just a comic book nerd that talk about stuff online. You're a fiction writer. It's not like we can actually influence DC, although that would be hilarious because there's a lot of changes that I would make.
I mean, you can have influence, because look at Twitter.
Mhm.
That's all that they pretty much rely on these days is likes
Mhm.
and retweets, reposts, whatever they want to call X, whatever. And it can be just one panel that gets this attention, and that's all they care about, just that uh, panel of the week or whatever. But that doesn't bring in the sales. That doesn't bring in new fans, new interest, nothing like that. So you constantly put yourself in this corner, just
Mhm.
like with New 52. New 52 sold more than Rebirth, but
Yep.
but but because you have these older fans constantly complaining, constantly um, harassing the pros. I remember when Tony Daniel, he deactivated his Twitter and Facebook about 5 times or so because someone he said when the DCEU was first starting to ramp up, he wanted a Superman and Wonder Woman movie, and he just kind of like put the tweet out there. He would support it. He would want to, and they called him cancer. He should be canceled. All this stuff, and he's like, I'm just putting my opinion out there. You know,
Mhm.
Charles, when he was the writer of the book, someone told him to jump off a bridge. Things like that,
I know, it's just really
or
annoying.
just, or even just slurs. And I'm like, they're just fictional characters. Why are you being so? Why are you taking it so personally? Why are you attacking someone's character that you do not know them, and you're attacking their personal life? That should be off limits. Period.
Since you keyed me up so well for that.
Okay, they're talking about fictional characters. Fictional characters.
There you go.
That yes.
So I also had this funny thing. It's like, I posted, what's the most boring couple in comics? Always the Superman and Wonder Woman. And not, that's a Freudian slip. It was Superman and Lois Lane.
Yeah.
So someone posted, you got no sense of chemistry or romance if you think Superman and Lois as a couple is boring. They're still one of the good couple of comics in this day and age, and the fact that has persisted over 80 years is a feat. And I'm like, first off, it hasn't persisted over 80 years. Like you said, they haven't always been together, but that's besides the point. And then he said also MFer. Yeah, there you go. You want boring, then Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy is right there. And I was like, okay, nah, but all right. I said, just because I have a different opinion doesn't mean I don't read comics, because he had accused me of doing that. And I said, that is gatekeeping at its worst. He said, also add this to the list of tourists who think Superman's boring because they don't read the comics. So there you go. And then here's the really funny part. So then he goes, I see that you're a Snyder shill that explains that. And I'm like, you realize that Superman and Lois is a key plot point of the Snyderverse, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, they don't think about this stuff.
No, as long as they can, it can be something that they may partially agree on, you know, but if it's still, like I said, it has to align perfectly with their beliefs. So if it doesn't, and if you come back at them with facts, with the fact that you do read, then they'll try to target something else, just to try to make you feel less of a fan.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I have strongly disagree with. Well, actually, when people say you don't read the comics, I always reply with, actually, I haven't read the same comics you read. Because I'll admit there are some comics where Lois Lane is written okay and
Decent.
decent, and I'm more of a. I've said I've liked Lois more in the shows and TV shows, except for My Adventures with Superman, but that's obvious. But this thing, I just don't like the way she's written nowadays. That is it. And I have a buddy of mine that I did a debate with on Nerdette's show, and I think I sent you that one. And I was like, okay, but I like some depictions of Lois more. I still don't like the character because I find her annoying, but I'm more, what's the word, like amiable to one particular version. Just because I don't like this particular version now doesn't mean in other words, what I'm trying to say is that it's not a black and white scenario with a character that's existed for like 80 freaking years.
Right. Well, here's the thing. It's like, first she was written, as a brash or whatever, that girl boss type thing. And at some point that goes overboard.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, well, obviously Superman isn't boring. He isn't. His concept isn't. It's the way he's written that's boring. It's the way that they limit him that's boring. So with his relationship with Lois, it is boring because they have to, limit him. Especially in my Adventures of Superman, the whole point of it is to be normal. Like, basically, this extraordinary life that you could have with your powers, you want to basically give that up to be this normal guy or whatever without the powers.
And remember, I think it was Superman 2, that doesn't work out that well.
Right. And but again, that kind of stuff, that the consequences are glossed over, because I've seen where they say that they don't particularly agree with some of the stuff in the My Adventures show, or some of the shows that they do have, but because they're together, that's all that matters. As long as their ship is together, it can be mediocre, it can be really badly written, but as long as their ship is setting sail or whatever, that's all that matters to them. And that again, why DC had the reboot in the first place, because you had them married, you had this like standard across the board, stagnant status quo, and that's all they wanted, was just flat.
Yeah, that's
but that
true.
wasn't bringing in new interests, so they had to shake things up. They had to do that. And now that you have that back again, you see the interest, even for the older fans. They aren't interested. It's like, well, we see a cute panel or we see them together and we'll accept that. But the overall story, the plot or whatever, they could care less for it.
That's the other thing, is by speaking of which. So another time, another thing I forgot to bring up, speaking of that, saying how cute panels, they apparently think it's valid that the way they try and refute me is just by sending me panels of Superman and Lois together. And I'm like, why do you think that's going to change my mind?
Right. That is something that I will, never understand. You can have all of that, but I mean, people can have fan art of that too, of Superman with somebody else, and it's pretty much the same thing. What I go for, and especially as a writer, is, okay, well, on that panel, are they having like an important conversation? Like the one from Wonder Woman 800. It was Superman opening up about his fear, of his pain, and how accepting himself as they are these it seems like they're perfect beings, but they're
Yeah.
actually imperfect. That all this stuff happens, but that one moment that they have together, it brings them back to, we can be perfectly imperfect together. We can have this understanding. We can have this, bond, just as friends. And that is more meaningful, than just a panel of kissing or whatever.
Yeah.
That doesn't do anything.
It's extremely superficial because the reason why I got on the Superman and Wonder Woman train, it was that ending part of Justice League 12, but it was before the kiss. That entire conversation when they're talking about they're the only two Justice Leaguers that understand what it's like to have to distance yourself from people. In other words, it wasn't the kiss that grabbed me, because I could care less about that. It's more as the motivation behind that. And I'm sorry, they have the better motivation for being a couple. Rob, no matter what you say, this is not a boring ship. I know you would say that. I've debated you on that. But that's a little comic explained, but it's all good, brother. But the thing, it's like in that entire conversation on top of the Lincoln Memorial, they both just talk about having to be different from each other, different from the world. Plus the fact, remember, the New 52 JLA was formed because people were fearful that if they are together, they could. For some reason, they linked that Superman and Wonder Woman being a couple to injustice somehow. So I'm like, okay, I get the motivation that you're scared, but of all that, I'm like, you had 5 years at this point to form a JLA team in case the Justice League turn evil, and it takes Superman and Wonder Woman dating to motivate that. It's a little weak, but the point is, and like you said in Twitter DMs, that's because Comics Explained had said that, like, it was said that there's no stakes between Superman and Wonder Woman, and I'm like, well, yeah, the stakes is the entire world turning against them. That's it.
Yes, because you have these two powerful beings that aren't human, and that really reflects the real world with culture. You see this different cultured person, from a different country, and some people will judge you for that, because I don't know you, I don't understand who you are. So it's like, I'm going to fear you. And with these two different cultured, powerful physically beings, that just put that fear to a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, these two beings are sacrificing things, are putting their powers to good use by protecting you. And yet you still make them feel, misunderstood. You still make them feel like they're not welcome. And that again goes to the immigration experience.
And you bring up a good point, because it's like, and this was also shown a little bit in the movie Batman versus Superman. It's like, with all this distrust and vitriol being thrown against Superman, or in the comics case, Superman and Wonder Woman, they still continue on to protect humanity no matter what, knowing that there's a segment of humanity that fears them, even fears them being together. And you even dealt with this in Special Bonds and the consequences that could have, which, well done, by the way. But
Thank you.
But the thing is like, they're looking superficially, well, who could harm Wonder Woman? And I'm like, okay, I get that those are the stakes with Lois, but there are different stakes. It's just not as obvious, in other words.
Right. I don't understand why the stakes have to be, oh, we have to hurt you. We have to kidnap you. We have to, threaten you by death or whatever. No. It's not that. It can be a conflict, an inner conflict of their own insecurities. It could be their family, rejection, that feel of isolation. It doesn't have to be just somebody, about to die. And I think that's what so many people are geared towards, because that is the old classic cliche trope, is that the love interest or whatever has to be kidnapped, has to be tied up, and the hero has to save, well, him for Steve and her for Lois or Gwen or MJ or something like that. That's what people are conditioned to think. They don't think beyond that these two beings can, well, first, you can have Superman versus the gods and they
Which
can hurt them.
would be so cool. I'm
Right.
really surprised. Can I say this? I'm really surprised there hasn't been an epic Justice League story where it's Justice League versus the gods. I'm like, of all of they kind of did this in Injustice, which I enjoyed, but I'm like, where's the main story? Because the gods are petty as hell if they would be jealous of the Justice League taking all the adoration.
Right. Well, I think that that's one of the stories. I think that that's what Charles Soule, he was trying to build too. Maybe not the whole Justice League, but something within that though. And it's like all these creative, ideas that were actually put forth into the book. I mean, he left a lot of interesting threads, but he was off the book because he wanted this melodrama that Tomasi brought. And it's like, he had to change their actual first meeting to something antagonistic just to try to create conflict. And it wasn't natural conflict either.
No, it was annoying. And it's like, and I'm like, where do we see this? That's why I always say, if you're going to read the Superman and Wonder Woman series, stop at volume 2.
Right.
Read the first 2 volumes and you're good. But I brought this up because this is my favorite moment from the book, when Apollo blasts Superman with sunlight and Superman goes, "You don't know that much about me, do you?"
Right. That is a moment that I really love, because it really shows their worlds can be put together, can blend in. You have the Wonder Woman can bring in the magic, the gods. Superman can bring Zod and Farah in a scientific sci-fi type thing going on, and it all blends together.
Plus the fact, I also love the line that follows, where after he punches Apollo out of the volcano, he goes, "Before you say anything, Diana, I know you could have dealt with him." And then she goes, "I know, but I enjoyed watching you deal with him even more." I love that. That is so good.
And because it gives respect that, Wonder Woman is powerful, but at the same time, Superman wants to basically, honor her.
Yeah,
and
he's the typical guy. He wants to protect his girl.
Yeah. And with that they aren't normal. If you read the book, they have very normal interactions as a couple. I see a lot of that. I think who is that? J Rock on Twitter. He explains it, and I've done that too. I've done a write-up that if you look, it's right there, so simple that they are dealing with the gods, but Apollo is her brother. That's like taking your boyfriend or your girlfriend to meet the family for the first time, and the siblings or the cousins or whatever are being a little messy, being a little distant, and they start a fight. That's the thing. It's just normal couple conflicts, interactions. It's just up a scale, and that's what makes it so interesting.
That's a hell of a first meeting of the family. Jeez.
Right. But at the same time, that is what happens in families though. We just see it as normal, but they just put it on a whole nother level. And that's what makes it interesting.
Plus the fact
can have
the entire first volume is them trying to be a normal couple, but also balancing superheroing. That is the plot of of volume 1 of that book. So yes, they may not be normal, but they're trying to be as close. That's why DC is traditionally known as the gods trying to be men, essentially.
Right. You can have this normal, and that's the thing, is that they accept very quickly. They do accept that they're not normal. So what they do is they create their own normal. And that again reflects reality, is that my normal is not your normal. We live in two different states.
Mhm.
So, you know, so that's already a difference. We are different ages, different ethnicity, different gender. So that's already a difference.
Mhm.
And that is what Superman and Wonder Woman represent, just in general, as a couple and as individuals. But completely a couple too, is that again, it has something to do with culture, with blending in these different cultures. Is that we might have different viewpoints, but when kind of just put it all together, it is the same.
Plus the fact, and here's the thing. Here's how you know DC also agrees, and these fans also agree with us, really, that he means to be Wonder Woman. You notice how a lot of the big moments that they point to, how Lois is awesome, like she's shooting Zod with a gun and everything like that. They always highlight the parts where DC very obviously tries to turn Lois into Wonder Woman, and I'm like, actually, thank you for giving me more evidence as to why Superman should be with Wonder Woman.
Right. Yeah. I noticed that too. Is that well, that's why they try to write her as nice too. At first she was very abrasive and very selfish. I mean, she still is, but
I mean, she
now they try
revealed his
to.
identity to the world. And when Rob brought that up on the show, I was like, in my mind, I was like, I'm not gonna like challenge that because I don't want to I don't want to start a fight on the interview. But in my mind, I was like, okay, so she revealed his identity to the world. How is that a good thing?
I mean, that's her whole agenda in the first place. It's to reveal his identity, to expose his secrets or whatever, to get a Pulitzer. You
Mm-hmm.
want a man-made award. You know, that's something that is kind of like, it's not like she's changing the world for the better for children. No, she just wants an award. So what is that going to do? How is that inspirational?
And that's the thing. And this is where I come to blow fake blows. I want to be clear on this, fake blows with the Wonderbat community, because they're always like, because I'm like, if anything, Wonderbat kind of makes Diana look shallow because she's with a rich guy. And I'm just like, okay, beyond the character thing, it's just like, because you want the princess to be with the prince, and that just doesn't work. And it's just like, and the thing is like, I just think that's a superficial view on Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. It is, because I mean, that's why she left her island in the first place. She
Mm-hmm.
didn't care for the luxuries. She doesn't care for that. She loves the simplicity of the world, the natural nature. She loves just being free. Like, when you actually read her stories, you can see her running out the forest, running, walking the shore, going hunting, stuff like that. You don't see her caring for jewelry or anything like that. She may seem luxurious, like in the 52, she lived in London and had a condo.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, she is an ambassador, so, and she is a princess. So she is going to hold herself as royalty, but she doesn't have that act. She doesn't have that, she doesn't go for that though. She's still very humbled, and that's why you see that she's gravitates to Clark, because he comes from just a simple farm, and to see how humbled he is. He's a man of power, but very humbled. You know,
And
Bruce is an he might not have powers, but he's a rich guy with issues.
a
You
lot
know,
of issues. I love that line.
pretty much with this emotional baggage, this emotionally stunted. You can see in Wonder Woman 800 how even in his dream he is just a lost child. So that's pretty much what that is. It's just a a grown woman taking care of a child.
And that just first off, that's a little creepy. If
it is.
it's really creepy. Plus, here's the thing: the other reason why I think it works better than at least Wonderbat is because here's what you have to understand about Superman versus Batman. Superman is literally the refutation of everything Diana has been taught about man. He has all the power in the world, but he is devoted to helping mankind. Bruce, unfortunately, is the closest to the way the Amazons see men.
Yes. And I don't get when they say like it's well, I know Rucka. He wanted to he knows that that's bad. That is going against the Amazons. And what he wanted to do was have Wonder Woman be rebellious against her mother to go for the guy that is, that basically just is a representation of the toxic, masculinity and everything that the Amazons are against. But yet you keep try to make her out to be like she can be play nurse or play a therapist, and that's something, again, it goes back to reality. Women, that's not women's job to do, so why take this feminist icon and try to turn her into something that women in reality are never ever supposed to be? That is very sexist, and that is very toxic.
Plus, what does that say about Batman that he constantly needs a nursemaid? So it's even insulting the Batman. But the other thing is, by the way, speaking of Rucka, there was this great story he wrote in Wonder Woman Hikatea. There was this great shot of her. It's this panel of her walking through the embassy, and I had to look closer. But if you know, she's holding a Superman mug.
Yes.
I was like, it's kind of funny with Wonder Woman. She has a lot of Superman memorabilia as well.
Well, I mean, at some point, even though they weren't together pre-52, it was still those little teases here and there. It was still those little, things that let you know as a reader, or, if you pay attention to detail, that they have a close bond. Some writers, may try to distance them, especially now. I mean, look at Rebirth's sole purpose was to distance them, but at the same time, you have some writers that see their natural bond and want to write them together. So they put little teases, hints here and there. And that's how Pre-52 went with, just his symbol on a mug.
And it's like and by the way, that's not us conjecturing about the purpose of Rebirth. Tomasi himself said so after Reborn. He said, the whole purpose of this was to wipe that relationship from the canon. That's why I can't stand Rebirth as a publishing initiative. It has some good stories, but that's why I'm not a big fan, because they've straight up said the reason for this initiative was to wipe away the New 52. And I'm like, well, that's just vindictive as hell. But the thing is like, that's my biggest thing. When they could have just said, okay, we're going to place it on another Earth and stuff and just leave it there. If we want to revisit it, we can. And they kind of did this with Doomsday Clock. Who knows if that's still canon. But the point is like, they could have done that. But instead they chose, no, let's just wipe it all out of existence. And what's kind of funny, you notice after they tried to wipe the relationship out of existence, other writers started to reference that relationship as something that happened in the past. And even the DC Encyclopedia said it happened in the past. So I'm like, you need to get to communicate more with your publishing department, DC.
Well, that's because, it was a phenomenon all on its own. It was successful.
It got headlines, and we know that's what DC wants.
Right. So you can't just wipe away something that pretty much, was so, I guess, grounded in a sense in that particular era. And, their character history now just doesn't make any sense. You have to cherry pick certain things, and it contradicts so much other stuff, you know. So I get why that they wanted to wipe the relationship because it doesn't make sense. I think that within the 5 years they was probably together literally 5 years maybe. Because I think that, yeah, because they started dating in the New 52 when I think Diana was 23.
Mm-hmm.
But when Rebirth started, she was 28. So, yeah,
I
5
think
years.
roughly that, because
Yeah,
okay, so they met in volume 1, and then of Justice League, and then there was a 5-year gap between 1 and 2. So there's the 5 years, and then they started dating, and then however long it was between then and Rebirth, yeah, we'll say 5 years
yeah.
of real
So
time.
that's a very long time to be with someone, but now you have this character that's supposedly married with a 10-year-old, or however old John was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, none of that makes sense at all. And then you have Diana where she had like a mental breakdown, and now her whole entire history is just an illusion. You know, that they had to either gloss it over or completely erase it. But it's still something that had to be addressed because it was such a strong plot point, and it was such a strong, like, that's their connection. Whether they're completely romantically linked, or it's just like how Pre-52 was when they tried it, for an issue or whatever, because Barn or whatever, I think he wanted Clark with Lena,
Mm-hmm.
or Cat. So he basically messed up anything with Diana, and especially with him again, the whole "I want to be normal" thing. So
Which it's limiting to the character, the whole normal thing, because here's the thing. Yeah, he'll never be normal. He's an alien from Krypton.
yeah,
That's not the
but
way it works.
you see that when that didn't completely work, I think in the early 2000s, before the reboot,
Mm-hmm.
right before maybe, or between, they did try to start bringing that back in, of him accepting, who he is. And that's pretty much, I think 2000, I think Morrison was going to do a reboot again.
Oh man, I love Grant.
Yeah, I think it was him and somebody else, but it was about him, I think, pretty much accepting and erasing the marriage, because that is something that's holding him back, is that marriage. Because Lois is normal, so he has to have this normal thing.
Plus,
So any
it limits the stories that can be
Yeah.
told with it. And plus, here's the thing: you can't tell me a book that's labeled the wedding of Superman and Wonder Woman wouldn't sell.
Oh, that would.
You
I mean,
if the first issue of the Superman and Wonder Woman story sold
so
100,000 copies, you can't tell me the marriage is not going to sell well.
oh yes, that's. I mean, you have real couples having, wedding themes, Superman and Wonder Woman wedding themes already.
Yeah.
So just imagine them having a real wedding. Oh yeah, that is going to just be massive.
And what
That
people don't
would be.
realize, is that DC is a business. It has to function according to what will get it the most money. New 52 did. Now, granted, the New 52 could have been handled a lot better, like near the end and all that stuff. But the point is that you had several books that were selling really well. Superman and Wonder Woman being one of them, and even Charles Sewell or Tony Daniel, one of those two, said as much. And the thing is that when you take away something that was doing very well, I'm sorry, that's the complete opposite of what a business does.
I mean, right now the books that they have now are just 6-issue minis, and then if it sells, then they'll turn it into a maxi series of 12.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have any type of stability with the fandom to have these ongoings at all.
Mhm.
And going back to, let me see, going back to the 2000s, when I think, it was in the Superpowered documentary,
Mhm.
is that they were actually about to be shut down, the comic,
Yeah.
because the Batman Nolan films did so well that they wanted the comics to reach that same level. So they had to reboot. If everything was all peachy or whatever before then, they wouldn't have had to do this massive reboot. Now, yes, it was very flawed, but they had to do it so fast. Yeah, the execution, they fumbled it, you know. But they were trying to get, trying to understand, I guess, trying to get people on the same page. Some people, even the writers, they are just as much as fans, and so they have their own bias too.
Mhm.
And some of them didn't agree on a lot of things because they wanted it to be just how they remembered it, or just how they may have written it, uh, back then. So when you have people who are just so stuck on their own bias, so stuck on this particular view, that yeah, the reboot kind of did stumble. It brought in the money, it brought in the new fans, but long term it couldn't sustain because you have these people that are basically fighting in the background
Well,
and not agreeing.
the other issue, and Comic Tropes has a good video on this. They also had the issue. So they had like Grant was writing action, and I forget who was writing the actual Superman series. But the point is, they had two different writers writing the Superman series and the action series. The action was taking place 5 years in the past, and the two writers weren't communicating. So you also had some continuity issues. But
Communicate, yeah.
the thing I always go back to is that they always say that like the book flopped, and I'm like, okay, so wait a second. If the sales were reflective of the fact that Lois and Superman should be together, how come the sales didn't translate to that? Because even I brought this up on my Under Two Capes, talking about the doing a sales analysis on this book. When you look at the Rebirth books, one that was literally billed as a series to bring Lois and Clark back together, guess what? It sold very poorly. 30,000 copies is not good for Superman. You had a book that was like Superman and Wonder Woman. Even in the Tomasi era where it got really bad, it still outsold that in Trinity. How sad is that?
Right. I think Tomasi, Rebirth was already planned out a year. So if that started in 2016, yeah, his whole demolition on the relationship started 2015, late 2014, 2015. And but us as fans and readers would think that, okay, if we go out and continue to show our support, that maybe that would turn around. And what I didn't like was that he was kind of, he wasn't being truthful. It was kind of like, oh, this is rocky times, relationship conflict, just, kind of trying to pet the fandom at first. And we was like, okay, well, like I said, we're going to support the book to show that we want this relationship to continue.
Plus, the problem with that, the problem he ran into, and I brought this up, is that he brought up a relationship issue that was never an issue in the past, i.e. the Wonder Woman becoming the God of War. Because I'm like, wait a second, in the first volume of Superman and Wonder Woman, so Superman found out about it. He already knew about it, and he was like, okay, that's fine, because he freaking trusts his girlfriend. If ever there was someone that he could trust to be the God of War, I'm pretty sure it's Wonder Woman, the agent of peace.
Right. It was the conflict that they tried to, go for. It's like, well, the first volume or whatever already addressed this. It was already, even before being together. I know they had like sacrifice or whatever in in Pre-52 where Diana killed Max,
Mhm.
and it was like, well, Clark and Bruce was being hypocrites
Oh
because
yes.
you know you have this villain that's mind control, that's very dangerous, and he straight up says, if you don't kill me, Superman, he's gonna basically be a terror through this whole world. So she saved her friend by killing him. She made that decision based on her bond with him, and how he treated her was just so awful.
And I'm like, Batman, of all people, I should understand it's you because you have contingency plans in case this very thing happens. I'm like, wait a second here, dude. I remember Tower of Frickin' Babel.
It's some things that it's not natural conflict. It's always something that they're trying to force. And anything that has already established that, okay, if you want to go with that idea, it's not going to work. But you have to turn off your brain, at some point.
I love that. I love
and,
that.
and forget what you already read so they can force this plot that doesn't make sense. It contradicts, so much.
Yeah, and that's the thing. At least be consistent. Superman, I could see having more of an iffy feeling about the killing thing, but it's just the way they had Batman respond specifically, where it's like, I get you cannot like that she had to kill someone, but you can also trust that it was under the lasso of truth, so the dude was not lying, and he
And it's
again.
also the last resort.
Yeah, and also, I just want to really emphasize this point. He was mind controlling Superman. I just want to really emphasize that point there. But it's just like, if anything, that's a character assassination on Clark and Bruce, because I get the feeling that that the problem with the way DC writes this, it's not even with Superman and Wonder Woman specifically, it's also among the Trinity. They treat it like they really don't trust each other.
They don't, because the Trinity concept, I think it started with Kingdom Come.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really because it was really just the world finest with Superman and Batman. And then Diana came along, and they wanted the Trinity because they were the longest running characters that consistently had a book. That's where the Trinity came from.
Mm-hmm.
Then Kingdom Come put Diana on the same level as Superman because it was like she was that moral compass for him within that story. And then they represent the new beginning of having a child together, and then Batman is the godfather. So when they wanted to capitalize on that, they made the Trinity book, I think with Wagner. I think that was the first one.
I think
and
so.
Then they had more stories, even one Trinity, I think Eric Luke, I think that's his name. And Until the Rebirth, I think it was, Until Rebirth. But that concept doesn't really have a strong, it's not strong enough for them to be even called the Trinity. It's not where they are, this dynamic that has been truly explored as friends. You have Wonder Woman and Batman do not have much of a connection. Their only connection is Superman, really. He's the middle. And I think that what they tried to do was change it for Diana to be in the middle. But it's more so because she was supposed to be like the light with Clark in this like middle ground darkness. Well, that's what Rucker was trying to insinuate and force. She had like this inherent deep down darkness to connect with Bruce.
Which I'm pretty sure that's not Wonder Woman.
Right. And so that didn't really work. But when you have Superman in the middle, and then you have Wonder Woman, which is, a future wife or whatever, you know, in Kingdom Come, and then you have his best friend. Well, she's his best friend too, but you have his brother and best friend Batman. That works as a concept, but it's not something that can be ongoing. You know, it's really not.
It's not 100%. And the thing is that there was also a moment in the Teen Titans book when, like, I think it's like, I think Nightwing goes to Batman and goes, we're better than you because we still see each other as friends. Do you guys still see each other as friends? And they make it like they don't. And I'm like, okay, this makes no freaking sense, guys.
Yeah, they try to have those outside of costume moments, but again, it really doesn't feel natural.
It doesn't.
Not
It's
all
just
the way.
forced.
Yeah, not all the way. Especially the Trinity book, Trinity Rebirth book, when they tried to make Diana and Bruce friends with the pre-52 Superman now. It's like, well, he's not their Superman, so how can they have this bond? It's not the same.
Yeah, and plus, here's the thing. They could have had a pretty cool story where they were, like, trying to build that bond again. But again, they were like, Superman Reborn, wipe it! He's always been here!
And you still don't feel that connection even then, because you have to, with Clark and Diana, you have to acknowledge that they have that romantic tension. You have to.
That's why in the Jen Bartel book, I even showed this on stream once, and I was like, okay, the way they're holding each other, that ain't the way you hold your best friend.
I always call them besties with bennies.
Okay, that works. But the point is, you don't draw them like that unless there's some connection there romantically.
Right. And when you try to take that away, it just like ruins the dynamic, and it feels so robotic. It feels like they are strangers to each other.
And if there's two people that shouldn't be strangers to each other, it's Superman and Wonder Woman.
Yeah. They have the world's finest book right now. And it's like, why can't you have I don't know, I guess you can't call it power couple, you know, you can't, but at least just a Superman and Wonder Woman book set in the past, or a Black Label book that could explore that still.
Because they know that if they do that, and you've said this before too, they know if they do that, people would be like, okay, why aren't they together in the main continuity? Because I think they're afraid that it would be too popular for them to keep it in like Black Label. Because here's the thing about what Black Label became. Black Label became the place where we experiment on stuff, and if it's successful, if it sells well, we'll roll that into the main continuity, a la like sort of Three Jokers. But the point is that they're afraid that if they put this in a relationship, they know it's going to sell, because historically it has by a wide margin, particularly if you put Charles Sewell and Tony S. Daniel on it. They're afraid that they would be forced to go on that thing and then anger almighty Twitter.
That is true, and that is very sad, because Twitter, I mean, even right now with the Blue Beetle film, they're saying how they did campaigns, hashtags, and it's not the film fault because of the writer strike, and they can't advertise the movie, you know, as it can be. And I mean, WB is broke. So
well, yeah.
Really have...
Oh, yes. And the flash bombing didn't exactly help out.
Right. So the DC film brand is pretty much damaged. So you already have that strike against the film. And then no way to promote it properly. So that movie is on basically thin ice already. I think it did just 10 million, and that's like below Shazam 2. So yeah, the movie is already pretty much bombed.
Plus the fact, here's the thing, you're doing it on a character that barely anyone's heard about, and that's the thing. People can say, well, that's how these characters become more mainstream. You make them movies. And I'm like, you can't do that unless you firmly established and solidified the brand of the Trinity. And you didn't do that. And plus the fact, he announced a reboot before this. No matter if he says on Twitter if Blue Beetle's canon to his universe, no
Right.
matter if he says that, the average person is going to come into that and go, this movie doesn't matter anymore. Why am I going to go watch it?
Exactly. So you exactly. So you have that, and you have Twitter, this massive support. But then when it actually comes to actually going out to support with money, they don't show up. And that's DC's problem, is that they have comics. They constantly giving these books that can barely sell 20K, can barely go up to 50K. They have to do these gimmicks. And you have these people on Twitter saying, okay, we want this character, we want this and that, but they don't buy it. They don't actually support the book. So what are you, so I think it was one writer that said Twitter is only like 5%.
I think that was Mark Millar, and he says, yeah, it's like 5 to 10% of the actual reading audience. Plus, that percent is probably people that pirate books. They've openly admitted to this.
Yes,
and I'm like,
yes, they have.
Why are you paying attention to these people? Obviously, paying attention to them is how you got to this point where you are in terms of the sales. Because you went off of Twitter's reaction, I'm going to go back to the Superman Wonder Woman book, and canceled this book that was selling extremely well.
Yes. Like, sales were disregarded. I mean, you had this stable fan base that even bought it. It doesn't even it goes beyond even the comics and the merchandise. You have T-shirts, you had cell phone cases, you had these what is that, bags, statue. Well,
that
Kiss
statue is way too expensive. Otherwise, I would buy it because I really
Right.
want that statue.
Right. It's one of the rarest statues, one of the most expensive. And that's still something that people want, because I've seen people put that statue and the mini version of it on their wedding cakes,
Oh,
as
that's
an
such
ornament.
a great wedding cake. I love that.
Yes. You have
Hell, I have on my shelf up there, I put the Superman and Wonder Woman action figures together. Even my dad is like, the hell is that? And I'm like, it works.
yeah, it does. And that's what they do. People buy the action figures, they buy the Funkos and all that, and they pair it together.
Hell, I have these two on the same side of my desk.
Yes, you have these, even if they are sold separately, people pair them together. Yeah, that's nice.
Thank you.
People put them together, and that's what they want. You can't just look at one social site and think, okay, this is our audience, when again, that audience has put you in a very, in a bind that you really can't get yourself out of. Flash was held as going to be their $1 billion movie.
The best DC movie since The Dark Knight.
Yeah, they said that with Blue Beetle too.
I know. I can't believe even Tom Cruise is like, oh yeah, I went to go see this movie. It's pretty good. Arguably the only movie that's been that level is the Snyder Cut. And even then I was like, okay, guys.
Right. And their $1 billion movie is Barbie. And what Barbie is doing is setting a whole nother franchise that's not helping with the DC films. So
plus, adding on to the fact, you have recasted arguably two of the roles that people like the most, and that's Henry Cavill and as far as we know right now, possibly Gal Gadot. So you get rid of what people really want.
The Henry situation is very sad and just disrespectful, because they had him go on this wide, social media campaign saying that he's back, and then 2 months later he doesn't have the role anymore. And
the stupidest excuse, and I called James Gunn on this on Twitter. He goes, well, I'm not making a younger Superman. He just didn't fit what I wanted for Superman. And then we said, okay, then if you look back at his tweets, James Gunn said, it's because I want to go with a younger actor. And I'm
Mhm.
like, you realize that this guy could pass for early 30s. So I don't know what the heck you're going off of
He said the
with this.
younger years. He said the younger years. So, you know, anybody would think, okay, you want a young that is in his early 20s. But now it seemed like you are backtracking on that.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of stuff that he's saying, he's when he answers things, it's so vague to where I think that he's being very smart into not wanting to have anything concrete because is so much is changing. And I think that probably because of all these movies are bombing, that probably the plans that they have are going to change
Oh,
too.
I guarantee you with DC, here's my wild prediction. I think Cavill and Godot, I think the entire cast, maybe maybe Affleck's the only one, and maybe minus Miller, are going to come back. I'm going to make that prediction right now based upon how crazy things are right now, based upon how, on like you said, WB is broke and getting broker by the minute. I think that you'll start to see a lot of his DC projects get shut down. And then eventually they'll say, you know what? Hey, Zach, come back with these actors, complete your story, and then maybe even expand on it because I would love a Godot and Henry Cavill Superman and Wonder Woman movie. I want that so much. I've even made fan trailers on it.
Right. And those are some really good fan trailers.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that or I mean, I think The Rock, he had the idea of going ahead and adapting Kingdom Come, and
Which
that would have
I
been a
would so
closing.
want that. And plus, yes, Superman and Wonder Woman together. And I'm like, yes, plus would have killed Lois. Problem solved.
Yeah, you could have given them, even if they, I think he's so devastated with losing the role. I don't think he wants to come back unless it's like a really, really good deal.
Unless they say we have the contract all printed out and everything just on the dotted line. And here's the thing: if they bring back Zach, the other people will come back because they have demonstrated in the past that they will come back at the very least for Zack Snyder.
Right. So you have that, but WB is so stern on not wanting to be wrong that they probably won't do it.
I
You know,
mean,
it's
look what happened. The best opportunity that they had is when the Snyder Cut was released, and you saw like all this positivity around DC films for the first time in a very long time. What they should have done is announced, okay, we're delaying all that other stuff. Zach, come back, finish your story. We need more of this. People want more of this because number one, when the Snyder Cut came out, people were like, this is what you were leading to. I want this. Every time they reveal more about Zach's story, they're like, the fan base is like, okay, this would have actually been really cool. And I'm like, yeah, you should have shut up and let the man do his work.
even if not a live action, they can animate it. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
you know,
100%. And then still have the actors come back for voice acting because arguably that would be the easiest way for them to do it because they could voice act from literally anywhere.
yeah, and it can just be under the Elseworld label if you want to do that. It doesn't have to be main. It's just go ahead and use your multiverse.
That you
You
keep
know,
telling me
when you
about.
yes,
Whenever Warner Brothers brings up the multiverse, I always go back to that one clip from A Princess Bride where the guy says, "You keep saying that name, that word. I don't think you know what it means."
because they know what it means, but and that's what makes them fear it is because if they don't want to be their own competition, especially with a certain status quo. This is DC2 with a certain status quo that they want to stick with.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how we said with Superman and Wonder Woman. If we were given another book, that book is guaranteed to sell, and it will outsell the current Superman book, especially the current action book. Wonder Woman is getting a relaunch, but I her sales are always good anyway. So it will
We'll
outsell.
see, because King could have, if King sticks to what he says he's going to do, it could be really good. But yeah, it's the same thing with the DC movies. Before Justice League, or as I like to call it, Craptus League, and I mean the theatrical version of the movie, they were on a steady trajectory going up. Man of Steel, BVS, even Suicide Squad, the non-Ayer version, made close to $1 billion. Then they screw with it, and then arguably Aquaman made $1 billion, partly because it features many shots of Jason Momoa without his shirt on, and then also because it tied into the current story a little bit. So it was more like, okay, that's fine. But if you notice, none of these movies. It's amazing how closely DC films mirrors the comics, their success and then massive failure.
Yeah, I mean, it's always controversy is going to sell. You know, it might stumble, but it might be a good thing. And that's what the Snyderverse, that's what that was. You know, not everybody's going to agree with it, but it was ambitious, and it could be just thought as an Elseworld or something like that.
Which I'm
just
fine with. Just complete the story.
Right. And with Superman and Wonder Woman, they've thrived on Elseworlds anyway. So putting it there, it doesn't lessen it at all. You know, you can, I mean, my Instagram, we have, I think, 53,000 followers.
Nice.
And I can just post a comic panel from an Elseworlds, or just, you know, something, and it will get massive reaction because that's all people are interested in. You know,
yeah, I'm sorry, that was the most exciting thing coming out of DC. Hell, it got me reading DC back in the day. So I was because I was going on Facebook and it got headlines like they want it, and I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I will check this out. And then here I am today.
Right. That is the thing. If you want these new fans, you want these new interests. Not everybody is gonna like the same thing. Not everybody is gonna be interested in the same thing. That's what makes us different and unique, and that is a very good thing because nobody wants to be the same. We don't want to be a herd of sheep, you know. No. So given these different type of iterations of the characters, and they have a certain niche, if that niche sells, continue on with it.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't care. I don't care if they do a because actually it's more ideal if they do Elseworlds, because then they could legit kill people, because they can show, they could really dig into Superman and Wonder Woman's immortality and have it like one by one their other friends die, like of old age, like Bruce, Hal, Barry, and then they have to deal with the fact that eventually it's just going to be the two of them.
That's what happened with Immortal Wonder Woman, when they were at the end of time.
Yeah.
And they were the only two left. Even that got controversy because, or, you know, online, and sending death threats, you know, to the writer because Diana said that she loved him.
Yeah, and she was like, I hope that in his last moments, I wonder if he was thinking about
of me.
And I'm like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was very ambiguous because, and that's what I like too, is just that ambiguity. You don't know. It's not a will they, won't they. It's a are they type or aren't they. You know, you can't really tell, but they might be best friends, but they have such this romantic vibe that you can read it with any type of interpretation. But of course, we are gonna read it romantically, whatever. But that's what I love about the dynamic, because you can read it any way you want, and also that's gonna make, you know, the haters mad too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because again, for some reason these purists operate in a hive mind where you're not, because I have friends, and not even in the Superman Wonder Woman camp, in the Snyderverse camp, that if you just bring up, hey, you know what, I like this part of Man of Steel, let's say, they'll go, oh my gosh, screw you, you suck, you're not a Superman fan. And I'll be like,
Yes.
all I did was I said I liked this part of the movie.
No, you it's gotten to a point where you can't even say that, well, I like his suit when it doesn't have the trunks.
Oh yes. Oh god. If you change what, if you somehow advocate for a change in some way, ignoring the Lois, it's like, what I'm wondering is, and there are plenty of times when they have changed. It's like when they changed his motto to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. And by the way, I think they changed that back stealthily, which I'm like, thank you. But the point is like, when they changed it to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, why wasn't everyone freaking out about that? Because this community apparently freaks out when the slightest thing is changed about Superman. They were upset that New 52 didn't have the freaking S curl.
It was the his. I love the jeans and tee costume. I really do, because it represents the everyday man anyway.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I
But
love that. That's so badass.
yeah, so in the S curl, I mean, that is very superficial type things. As long as his core character is the same, then that's all that matters.
Yeah.
The I really don't care for the trunks. I really don't. I mean, I don't
I
really
think they
see
look kind of stupid, honestly.
It depends on who's drawing. They do though. I guess because we're in 2023 and it's really just something that's unnecessary.
Because I get what it's supposed to represent, the circus strongman stuff. But here's the thing. Here's the difference with that. And there was first off, it's seen as a joke universally, because I was watching this movie. I think it's like We Can Be Heroes or something like that. It's like a very kiddie superhero movie, but I was bored. So, and they make a joke that like, we can't be superheroes. I can't wear my underwear on the outside of my pants. And the thing about it is, yes, it does depend on the artist, because if the artist draws them like trunks, it looks freaking dumb. If they write it as just like a coloration on the suit, that's okay, fine, I got that. But the thing is that it's like, even when they were doing the suit for Man of Steel, Zach was very clear. He's like, yeah, we went through many different versions. I tried my best to keep the trunks. It's just, I just couldn't get them to work.
It doesn't work in live action in modern time. And well, that's why they changed his motto, because it reflected just modern time. American Way is so specific to a certain standard from, I'll say, back in the 50s, that it puts you in that mindset. So they wanted to change the model to be more relatable to the modern world, which I get, because the American Way, it's not defined. How the fans want to label that is, American means you live in America. Like,
Yeah.
you are born and raised there. It's not that a person that is an immigrant comes to America, a refugee that comes to America. You are straight American. And that,
And the thing about that is that that's kind of a superficial way of looking at it, because what that was, that's just shorthand for everything that Superman's supposed to be. It's just the American part that's the problem, apparently.
Yes. So that's what they were trying to do, and I actually like that, because he is supposed to be the man of tomorrow. So that does fit. But you can't have the man of tomorrow, but his views are from yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's stuck in. He's stuck in yesterday's time. And then they want John to be the Superman of today, but he doesn't exactly represent what's important.
And you notice his books never sell well. I wonder why.
They had to use Injustice for this mini to sell. Had to stick them to Injustice world, but I think the last issue of that just completely fell flat.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so how are we gonna end this? We're gonna end this with an epic battle. Oh no, he's just gonna hug him. What? And remember, this is after they're hyping it up as Superboy's finally get. I call him Superboy because he's not Superman. Superboy's
Right.
finally gonna fight Ultraman and get payback for all the years he was tortured. Oh no, Injustice Superman's gonna snap his neck. Oh no, John is gonna have to fight an evil version of Clark. Oh my gosh, here he goes. He's gonna go punch him, and he's just gonna hug him.
That is that's pretty much sums it up, and that's a waste of trees to me. There's no story at all.
Actually, here's the thing, Britt. I disagree with you on that. It actually makes great toilet paper.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the only use.
That's why I always say Tom
you can make
Taylor.
a bird nest or something like that.
Hey, there you go. Or like you can put it in your pet's cage or something like that.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, that's what I always say about Tom Taylor. He's good at Elseworlds writing. When it comes to in continuity stuff, he falls flat on his face.
Well, that's because he can't have the characters out of character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he is confined by, and sometimes that is good because some writers do. They want to twist these characters in their view, and sometimes their view is very twisted. So so you need, to rein them in a little bit. And while yes, he is good with Elseworld, sometimes his Elseworld has an impact that it doesn't need to have.
Like Injustice saying that Superman needs Lois, otherwise he turns evil.
Yes. And
I'm just like,
that was a plot point now, isn't it, in the My Adventures show?
Yes, it is. And the thing about it, by the way, this episode of My Adventures Superman was way better because they're actually playing with, like, they're doing essentially right now the new 52 plot of when he was captured by the government. So at least they're doing something cool, and they're sort of doing like the humanity doesn't trust him. But yes, they are doing that. And the thing about that is that what people conveniently forget about Injustice, and I said this many times whenever I've talked about that storyline, is that it wasn't just the death of Lois that pushed Superman to that point. It was a contributing factor, don't get me wrong, but it was also the fact that he was dealing with an evil Wonder Woman. I need to emphasize that point because her origin was legit evil. And Batman pretty much disowned him and said, screw you, dude. And Metropolis was nuked. So it wasn't just it wasn't just Lois Lane. Plus the fact, here's the thing. I think the whole he turns into Injustice, he needs her to ground him, ignores the contributions of John and Martha Kent. And I think we said that last week. And I'm like, guys, if anyone contributed the most, and Charles Sewell brought this up, he's like, you guys have been in that fantastic scene when Bruce goes to Clark. There's a reason why I've always felt comfortable trusting and working with you. It's because you were raised human. No matter all these powers you have, you're as far as you knew up until you found that ship, you were a human being. And that's not going to change. You always see yourself as a human that happens to have powers.
Yes. And Diana too. She can be a demigoddess or whatever, but these two are the most human characters there are.
Yes.
And together they would, if you haven't read the first volume, Charles really set the bar, and that was his goal. He said he was gonna just kick it right off the bat, of showing why they are together, and showing that just because they are together, they don't sit above the rest of humanity. They don't. And I don't really know where that came from, because they don't. Even when they're not together, they don't. Their whole conversations are about how can we help better? Who are we as people to do our jobs.
Hell,
You know,
that was a whole conversation they had in Volume 1 as well, when they're going to fight Zod, and Superman is like, listen, were we better at this job before we were together? And then Wonder Woman goes, if I thought that, we wouldn't be together. It turns out we are each other's shelter from the storm. And it turns out them being together ends up saving the day in that entire storyline.
yes, they make that sacrifice together because her sword, you know, he can see the atom, and her sword can split the atom. I mean, they set off an atomic bomb.
And they even asked, can we survive this? And then Superman goes, I don't know. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, well, does it even matter? And it's like, no, as long as they can save the world and save all these people, that is what makes them a hero. But in Rebirth, when they had the drowned Justice League story, Superman, he actually said, you know, I could have saved more people if I didn't go take Lois to the fortress. And it's like, so you
just admitted that.
So you let thousands of people, even children, drown, die to take her to the fortress. Like,
that's
what?
The other thing. He doesn't have to worry about Wonder Woman dying, and well, he kind of does, but the point is, he doesn't have that concern because she's right there with him. That's the other thing. It's like he doesn't have to leave his post to get his girlfriend out.
But the thing is, even if she does die, it's like she tells him, "Don't worry about it. This is my job, and this is my duty. I will die in honor." You know, so don't worry about that. But with Lois, it's like, oh yeah, you go tyrant, you know, go mess up the whole world because I'm not here with you. You know, just become a recluse and never, you know, find love again. Never be who you are. You just lose sight of who you are because of one person. And that's so dysfunctional. That is not very healthy.
That's toxic,
as a relationship.
as a matter of fact.
Very toxic.
And if you notice, in Kingdom Come is the perfect example of this, because it starts off, yes, Lois dies, but it wasn't the Lois dying that made him become a recluse. It was the people celebrating that. But if you notice, let me ask you this, Britt, who brings him back into the world?
Diana does.
And she gives him the glasses as well and all that, and that was just a fantastic. But first off, in addition to being a gorgeous book, that if you want to know why they work so well together, that's required reading right there. And it's like, that's the thing, and that's the perfect example, because once again, he was at that point, he was at that breaking point, and she brought him back to be the superhero he's supposed to be.
Because many times, even when married to Lois, Diana is his moral compass.
Mm-hmm. And he said that as much.
Yes. They have conversations together that, and he's even said, Lois doesn't understand this. You know, she doesn't understand how I feel, as if he does, you know, acknowledge that he's alien and being a superhero. She doesn't know. So Diana, she knows exactly how he feels, and she can help him. And Kingdom Come, it wasn't just Lois dying. It was because humanity turned their backs on him. And Diana was like, just because they turn their backs, you have to, you know, be the better man that I know that you are. Be the better person.
She even said, you can't keep punishing them. They know they did wrong.
Yes, you have to guide them. They need your guidance. She puts him on a pedestal because she knows that he can be uplifting, that he is supposed to be that guide.
That he's the ideal.
That is his purpose. His purpose isn't just for Lois. It's not. His purpose is for the whole world not to even go on the destructive path as Krypton did. That's his whole motivation and purpose. And the fact that he is a Moses allegory. It's like why is this all wiped out just for this one ship, this one character that's stuck in such a stagnant time? We're not in the 90s anymore, but yet they keep trying to relive it, just like how they trying to capitalize on Death of Superman. It's like that story is so overrated to me, very one note.
It's good, but the problem with, and again, I bring this up, Max Landis's Death and Return of Superman brought up the Return actually tanks Superman comics to the point where they have never recovered. That's why I went up when I brought up those statistics on the Superman Wonder Woman book on their Red stream. I said, when's the last time a Superman book has reached the 100,000 mark?
Yes, it can only go up to that much, only number one in variant covers. That's it. But after that, it's already a drop, a 50% drop. So even if it does hit the 100K, it's gonna automatically go to the 50K, and it might stabilize there, but more than likely it will drop to the 40s. And I think that's the base. That's pretty much the baseline of Superman comics is 40K.
Which is sad because he's arguably the most iconic superhero of all time. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing I really want to get to is so we've talked this entire show for about an hour and a half on dealing with the toxic fandoms. And the last note that I want to bring up is, Britt, how do you think we change things to create a more positive discourse around this stuff?
Okay. In a perfect world, all I would say is there's no changing how anyone, they're feeling in their belief. People are going to be negative. People are going to be hateful, especially with things that they don't like. I mean, it can be a very unproblematic thing, but that's the way fandom is if I don't like it, then it's just terrible across the board. Yeah. So what I would want to do is just give everybody, in a sense of what they want. Again, use the multiverse and have a label, a line of these different books or these different shows that have different status quos. And pretty much the best competition is your own competition. So just have a competition within yourself.
Because here's the thing, it's still money coming to the DC brand. It doesn't matter which direction of the brand it goes to. Right.
That's pretty much it's so simple to be said, but the creativity is not there to do it. But that's pretty much my idea. How I would run the company is exactly that. Just like, okay, you claim that you will support this, that you want this. I'll give it to you.
Do it.
But if you don't support it, then it has to be canceled, or something like that. But if you do, you keep your word and support it, then we'll keep it going.
Yeah, and that's that's pretty much exactly what I would do. And I would really hammer that Elseworlds line, because here's the thing about Marvel versus DC. The advantage to DC, heck, DC invented the multiverse. So use it. This is what makes DC superior to Marvel, is that they have this built-in mechanism where they can approach these different concepts that may not work in mainstream comic continuity. And you can essentially what DC needs is their own version of Marvel's Ultimate Universe, where they can have all these outlandish concepts, but still keep the convoluted stuff pure. So the purists can have their universe. We can have our own universe. Hashtag New Direction Verse, as a plug to the series I do with Jay Heat on his channel about where Superman and Wonder Woman are together. They have a kid and everything like that. She's a Green Lantern in my universe. But the point is, it's that you can have the thing about DC. Here's what really annoys me: you can make both sides happy for relatively cheap, because it doesn't cost that much to produce a freaking comic book. Just, it doesn't cost that much. So just make everyone happy. And if you make everyone happy, guess what that builds up? It builds up brand and customer loyalty. And that's something that's solely missing in the comic book industry.
Yes.
That's it. So on that note, we're going to wrap this up. Britt, always a pleasure having you on the show. This is really fun. And apparently, hey, the fan base loves it. So everyone's telling me, give me more. So I'm like, unlike DC, listen to what my audience wants. It's really simple. So
thanks for the support.
Anytime. So Britt, is there anything you want to plug? Anything that's coming out? Any fanfic chapters? This is me trying to like hint.
Oh yes, it's more one shots. I have it's about 5 of them that I've finally pretty much completed. And the 2 chapters that I told you about has been completely edited, which I am so happy for. So probably within next week, they will be finally uploaded.
Awesome. By the way, I did want to bring up, there was someone that posted that like responded, I think it was in DMs, to our first episode. And I'm trying to find that so I can read that. It was a really sweet note. This individual said, hang on, I'm trying to, she said, in reference to you, Britt, she says, I Am Star Diva is really cool, really knows her stuff with Super Wonder and just in general, the ideas of Super and Wonder Woman. That's why her fanfics are so top notch. If only she could work for DC. With her writing, Super Wonder would be unstoppable. That's true. And then he says, I said, she is awesome. Her stories really need to be turned to comics. And then we're like, we need to turn this into a fan comic series because particularly like Special Bonds, I could see that doing really well.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you so much for that. That's pretty much why I keep doing what I do with the writing, is because in some way, I try to contribute to this fandom because it's so special, and with everyone that I've met, it's very positive, and I want to keep the positivity going. So with my love of writing, that's what I want to give the fandom. So when I have that support, I just keep going. So thank you for that very wonderful message.
Anytime. So on that note, everyone, stay heroic and remember, Lois Lane.